Welcome back. It's India's big moment as G20 Foreign Ministers meeting will be held in New Delhi from the 1st to the 2nd of March amid the hardening of positions on the Russia-Ukraine war, which entered its second year last week. External Affairs Minister Shankar will host the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, and Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang, among others, at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. This will be Blinken's first visit to India since the war began last year, Lavrov's second visit in a year, and Qin's first visit as the newly appointed Chinese Foreign Minister. The G20 Foreign Ministers meeting under India's presidency is one of the largest gatherings of foreign ministers hosted by any G20 presidency. So why is it significant and how can India leverage this opportunity to its advantage? Let me welcome, joining us here on the program is Mr. Anil Trigunyat. We'll go across to Anil Trigunyat, who's a former ambassador and a diplomat, in just a bit. But first, let's listen in to the Foreign Ministry's briefing on the G20 meeting.
The G20 Foreign Ministers meeting under India's ongoing G20 presidency will be held tomorrow on 2nd March, but it would start with a gala dinner tonight. It would be under the chairmanship of our External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Shankar. This would be the second ministerial meeting being held under our presidency so far. As you all know, the first ministerial meeting has just concluded in Bangalore, which was of the finance ministers and central bank governors meeting. The venue of G20 Foreign Ministers meeting is going to be Rashtrapati Bhavan Cultural Center. Overall, 40 delegations are expected to participate in this meeting.
Let me welcome, joining us here on the program is Mr. Anil Trigunyat, former ambassador and an Indian diplomat. Very good evening, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador Trigunyat. If I may begin by asking you that here is, a very crucial juncture for a country like India. This G20 meeting is happening against the backdrop of divisions within the grouping of the world's largest economies over the Ukraine crisis. The Ukraine war indeed has sharpened the geopolitical divide, with the Russia-China axis and the US-Europe bloc pulling in different directions. So building a consensus, Ambassador Trigunyat, on any big-ticket initiative looks like an uphill task at the moment. How do you see India leveraging this occasion?
Well, I think that this happens to be the largest meeting of the foreign ministers under the rubric of G20 any time before. And we have invited 9 of our important strategic partners and friends as the special invitees, apart from the 13 international organizations and the 20 representatives and the foreign ministers from the member countries. Now, of course, this meeting, this summit, India's presidency, all this is happening in the backdrop of the conflict that is going on between Russia and Ukraine, or put it differently, between Russia and the West. Now, this is a major issue which the Western countries obviously like to flag it and would like to condemn Russia in the communique that likely to issue, or perhaps carry forward the contents of the UNG resolution that was just passed, yes, asking Russia to leave all territories. So they would like to have it. Of course, we have China and the Russian foreign minister are here, who are going to also raise different issues. I mean, we have seen that the Russians will probably talk more about the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline allegedly by the Americans or the NATO forces. Now, that is something that is also a violation of the international law in that sense. So I think that there will be accusations, counter-accusations. Now, that makes our life more difficult. Right. And especially to arrive at some kind of a formulation that would be acceptable to both sides. And as you know, what Prime Minister Modi had told President Putin, and has been telling it from day one, that this is not an era of war. We must stop. We must come down to the dialogue table talk, diplomacy should be given a chance. And I think this is precisely what is likely to be offered by us
Yes.
to both the sides. Because see, this meeting is the most important meeting in many ways, because this will decide the course of main summit. Essentially, will lead into the summit with respect to various recommendations on the key issues that the global, the whole world is facing today, whether it is energy crisis, food crisis, climate change, terrorism, development cooperation, all kinds of agenda items are there.
Yes.
And they have been all relegated to the background because of this G7 versus G2 or Russia versus the West, the duel which is being played out in every fora. I mean, we are not, nobody is apportioning a blame on the other, but at the same time, it indeed is a very difficult task. But we helped Bali. That's why in the Bali declaration could be issued with India's intervention. And I hope the diplomatic skills of Dr. Shankar will play out well even here.
That's an optimistic note, but I want to ask you that this kind of convergence, like you said, is extremely significant. India at the center of it, but whether it will be fruitful or not, whether something constructive comes out of it or not, remains to be seen. There is this view, Ambassador Trigunian, that the war actually suits the West, since lowering dependence on Russia works to the advantage of the Western nations, and it suits China as well. The war drains Russia, makes it more dependent on China, giving it that much more leverage. Now, India somewhere is caught in the crossfire, isn't it? It's being said that what is at stake really are interests of developing nations like India. We are the worst sufferers.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I think that what we are trying to do is one can see, I mean, it's my opinion, is that we can see that irrespective of what happens to the war, unless it goes into a World War III kind of scenario or a nuclear warfare, it will eventually turn into a Cold War 2.0, with Russia definitely being decimated to some extent and becoming a junior partner to some extent with the Chinese on the one hand, and the Western countries, but they are also being hurt in the process, as you know. It is not that only Russia is being hurt or the rest of the world, but the worst sufferers in this are the Global South. And the Global South happens to be today, whether we like it or not, India has become a voice of the Global South. We had this summit recently in which Prime Minister Modi hosted these 120 odd nations. And then we had the recommendations from those which have been plowed back into the G20 network so that they can be onboarded whenever the major statement of the summit is issued and the recommendations are taken on board, which becomes implementable. So India, in any case, I think that we have maintained our position as a country of a strategic autonomy. And I believe that there is no harm. I mean, we are experts in doing that. We have done it when we were very weak. It was non-alignment at the time. Today, it can be nations for a strategic autonomy. And large part of the world, whether it is the Middle East, in Africa, Latin America, part of Asia, I mean, everybody is looking at having their own voices heard to serve their own national interests. So I think that India has a capacity to lead in a sensitive manner when we are talking of the one world, one family, you know.
That's again an important statement. Like you said, India has the capability to lead from the front in this kind of a gathering. Thank you so much, Ambassador Trigunian, for joining us here this evening with your views on the subject.